All right, hey everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Astro Weather. We're actually calling this Astro Weather Plus. I am John Stigall, and I am one part of the Astro Transformation team here to discuss with you today Mercury RX or Mercury Retrograde. So, what is Mercury retrograde about? Well, I mean, as you can probably see by the GIF I put on screen, you've probably seen this in WhatsApp or GroupMe or any part of social media. Like people tend to freak out about this thing. They may not know or believe much in astrology, but it seems like everybody knows what Mercury retrograde is, and everybody kind of freaks out about it. It's like, oh no, I'm gonna get stuck in a traffic jam, or I was gonna go sign a contract, and now I can't do it because the person, the realtor, or whomever I was gonna sign with, they are out on a vacation, so I can't get my dream home or whatever. So yeah, there's all kinds of horror stories about Mercury retrograde, but let's break it down because it as bad as it seems, maybe it's not quite as bad as we think. I mean, there's kind of a game involved in Mercury retrograde, honestly. Maybe it's just how we look at things, how we see things. So, so just a little bit about Mercury in general. So, who is Mercury? What is Mercury? So, Mercury, our planet, first planet out from the sun, is named for the messenger to the gods, was Hermes in Greek mythology. Mercury rules communication, thought, publishing, local travel, commerce, early education, etc. So wherever Mercury shows up in your chart is really suggestive of how you think about things, how you're going to look at the world. Um, I mean, just really think about it, how you interact with things. So, and that can speak to the, sort of like the quality of your experience, whether you're maybe really forceful and direct in your communication. If you're a fire sign, your Mercury's in fire, like Aries or Sagittarius, you're just like blah, 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 out there direct. Maybe you're a little bit more emotional in your thinking. You're a little more irrational, let's say. Not bad, but just where people are like somebody with Mercury in an air sign like Gemini or Libra is like, okay, here's the concept, here's how it stacks up numerically, or Aquarius, for instance. If you have it in like Scorpio or Pisces or Cancer, you're probably a little bit more emotional, a little bit more sentimental in your thinking. Likewise, if your Mercury's in an earth sign, you'll tend to be a little bit more pragmatic or practical. Okay, well, does this work? Can I put my hands on it? Is it tangible? That sort of thing. So really, wherever Mercury is in your chart really suggests how you think about things and how you look at the world. So how you interact with the world is really how I want to say. But when Mercury goes retrograde, now here's the challenge. So we're in our modality. It's like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going about doing it. And then Mercury goes retrograde. All of a sudden, we gotta stop and kind of step back and take a look at things a little bit differently than what we have been. And if you're used to kind of going about things a certain way, that's probably not too good of a feeling. Let's say that I'd say it's probably not a feeling that you enjoy very much. So we're talking about things like problems that come up, challenges, disruptions in our daily lives, things like traffic jams. And it can be due to an accident. There may be a weather storm. As of the time of this recording here in Columbus, there actually was a pretty heavy weather storm for this early in the season in November, more so than what we've been used to these past couple of years. Then also some construction can come up. Typically, this is orange barrel season, and if there's already orange barrels, you're probably going to see a whole lot more orange barrels around this time. And if there aren't any orange barrels, well, all of a sudden you'll be driving around. It's like, hey, wait a minute, it's the new flower blossoming, the official flower of the state, orange barrel. So we tend to see a lot of like just delays. Your usual pathway forward might be closed. It might be a bridge, maybe a highway you're used to traveling down. All of a sudden, you can't go that way anymore. And you're like, oh, come on, really? Now I'm like 5, 10, 20 minutes, half hour more late for work or for my destination. So that can be really frustrating. Also, in terms of communications, and I'm talking things like email, letters. Well, who writes a letter these days? But like any kind of like written communication, electronic communication, even phone calls, even things like Zoom. where maybe it usually works, all of a sudden there's a network outage. And so the meeting you were supposed to be on, maybe you're organizing with your staff at your company organization, maybe it's a group of friends, a workshop, something you normally do. All of a sudden you have to choose something alternative to that because you can't do that the way that you were planning to do. So that's how Mercury can show up. So just a lot of just delays, things that can be frustrating. Speaking of frustrations, anyone like to travel during a Mercury retrograde? By a show of hands. I mean, like, we can't stop traveling. We can't stop living life, obviously. However, oftentimes we'll find that when we try to do something during a Mercury retrograde, this is when delays happen. I mean, you were supposed to catch that flight. All of a sudden, in the world today, we've got problems with there's not enough flight controllers. So it just so happens to coincide with a Mercury retrograde. It was bad enough before, folks. It's going to be even worse now. So just with that in mind, so just take extra care and don't expect to get anywhere on time. Expect delays, basically. But yeah, when Mercury retrograde shows up, we are going to encounter delays, things like in terms of travel. I mean, maybe your bus, if you catch the bus, if you catch light rail in the morning, you might find it delayed. Maybe there's a holdup in, some kind of way. The line breaks down, bus breaks down, they have to send a backup. So now you're 5 or 10 minutes late. Um, Also, in terms of publishing, if you do any amount of like publishing or writing, you might find some kind of delay. If you're relying on a publisher to get you going to sign off on your manuscript or whatever, you may find that delayed. So this can show up a lot of different ways. As I say here, obviously life doesn't stop in our modern world. We have to keep living and moving. I mean, maybe the ancient peoples knew this was coming and they said, okay, all right, we're going to pause everything. We're not going to do anything else at this point in time. And we're just going to sit this out for about 3 weeks. Well, we don't get to do that. Most of us are not independently wealthy. And even if you are, you still have to go on about life. So we just do what we do. More constructive take on this because, as I said, Mercury can feel like when it shows up, it's like the universe is playing games with you, or I mean, whatever you believe, the universe, God, whatever. Somebody's just like yanking your chain, and it can feel really annoying. But if we choose to embrace the opportunity it presents to us, that like, hey, well, I mean, if this is a game, I might as well go along with it, then it can be actually a constructive and fun and positive experience. At the very least, it's a chance to stop and pause and reconsider maybe a pathway that we thought we were so sure about taking. Maybe it's doing a different routine. Like I said, if you have like your set pathway routine that you go every single day, all of a sudden roads closed, bridges out, construction is on the road, or there's a big accident and you're not going to be able to get this through this way for a few hours. Well, okay, I guess I got to take a different way to work. Maybe you discover something fresh and interesting and new along the way. You go a way that you don't normally take. Um, so yeah, that is also one way to look at it. It can also be a chance to review things, manuscripts, contracts, whatever, for errors. Maybe you catch something that was going to cost you a lot more money than what you thought. You read the fine print, you catch an error that, well, I put that in there. Why did I put that in there? Okay, well, I'm going to take that out. So really, it's good to look at Mercury retrograde as a time to pause. If I didn't mention it, this does span the current period of November 9th through November 29th, so 2025. And we're talking about the Scorpio retrograde. I'm going to put a chart up on screen here. And so we can see, and I'll illustrate it here. So this is Mercury right now. This is where Mercury was as of November 9th, 2025 at 2:01 p.m. in the afternoon. So you can see it. It's right next, it's not too far away from Mars here, but it's in Sagittarius. And so my software here, Astro Gold, it basically goes gold, or not gold, but it goes red. And so this is how we can tell it's retrograde. So it's going to go retrograde and it's starting at Sagittarius. And so basically, if you have anything in Sagittarius around 6 degrees, anything from 6 to 0 degrees of Sagittarius, all the way back to about 20 or 21 degrees, I believe, of Scorpio. you may be noticing this a little bit more commonly in your life. Like if this affects your ascendant, for instance, if you have, Sagittarius on your ascendant, then lo and behold, you're probably going to experience some, personal delay, or if this affects your sun or something like that. So this is where, as astrologers, we look for this in your chart. So just to kind of make a note of that, let's move on. So this is actually where it's going to end. So the Mercury retrograde is going to end here at November 29th, 2025, 12:38 p.m. in the afternoon. So about the middle of the afternoon here. I know I set the time for Columbus, but this applies pretty much anywhere. And just the angles and positions of the planets would be a little bit different. But if I illustrate this on your chart, so you can see where Mercury is, it's come all the way back over here to 20 degrees of Scorpio. So again, if you have anything around, so approximately 6, 7 degrees of Sagittarius, all the way back to 20 degrees of Scorpio, you're going to be affected. So if this is, your chart, if this is your birthday, your Sagittarius, then I mean, this is 7 degrees, so you won't be directly affected. But, let's say if this was your Mercury or your Venus rather, then, you might see some, maybe make a purchase of some kind. And it's like, oh, okay, I thought that was a good idea. And then you get it and you find out maybe there's some flaws in it. I mean, which, Venus can be what we value. And, there's some sense of like wanting to beautify our areas with Venus based upon when there's a transit when it shows up. And so maybe you go out and buy a fresh set of curtains and get them and you find out maybe there's holes in them. Maybe it didn't match up with the description some kind of way. So we can kind of get a little sense of, okay, maybe that wasn't the best way to go at that point in time. But we're going to review it and maybe we send them back. Maybe we get another pair, something like that. So and that can show up in a lot of different ways. We look at things like your sun. If Mercury is transiting your sun, you may have a very personal experience around communication. Maybe you were responsible for a presentation and it just gets messed up some kind of way. It may not be any fault of your own, but you had this big presentation that you had to do for maybe your company or your group or whatever, and something goes wrong. The projector just doesn't work. You tested it out, you did everything possible to make it work, and day of your presentation, the bulb goes out. So you can't present that way. So it's like, what do I do? What do I do? Of course, raise your hand if this has happened to you before. You improvise. You're not going to be able to use a projector. Maybe you find a whiteboard and you write everything out on screen because you probably have it already memorized and written down enough. You just go for it and it ends up being just fine. These are the ways in which Mercury can challenge us. If, say, your Mars is here, and Mercury challenges your Mars or transits your Mars, you really want to do something. Mars is all about action, getting into the mode of just going. Mars doesn't think. It's like Aries. It just goes. It just jumps on it. It acts. Well, you get Mercury, and Mercury's giving you different information. Maybe you thought, okay, I'm going to do this one thing. Let's go, let's go. And then Mercury gives you some different information as it goes retrograde. And it's like, wait a minute. Well, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I aim over here? What do I do? What do I do? Mars can get very, 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 very frustrated when it doesn't get to move forward. So just know that you're gonna have some delays, you're gonna have some challenges, things around different information, different facts that will come in, and it may not all be clear. And actually, it's probably not going to be clear for a while during this period. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right, so just a little bit more information here. So, in general, Mercury retrograde periods typically last around 2.5 to 3 weeks. So, I know, it feels like it's going to go on forever. It's like, oh, when is this thing going to be over? And I'm sorry to say, sometimes it can drag out for a while, and it feels like maybe when Mercury retrograde first begins, you don't really notice it, and then it gets worse. Like things just start going, haywire after a while. And that, of course, can be based upon the placement of your planets. Like, again, if it crossed over one of your personal planets, Venus or your sun or your moon or Mars, and then it's coming back to that planet, you may start to see things act up in a particular area that it represents in your chart or in that aspect of your life. Or maybe it all hits at once in the beginning, and then it's like, okay, now you spend the next 2.5, 3 weeks sorting it out. So that can be the case too. The other thing I want to mention that many people sometimes you kind of notice when things are going kind of wonky when you get into the threshold of a Mercury retrograde period. Like we're not there yet, for instance. Like, well, we're in it now as of the time of this video, but like when you know it's approaching, sometimes you'll start to notice things. Like maybe something slows down, maybe something's a little bit off, maybe it's like you're gonna do something and then maybe you're going to talk to your boss about this big project and your boss wants a presentation. And then he says, hey, wait a minute, go ahead and work on that. But, I'm going to be out for a few weeks. So, I'll get back to you on that. But it's also something you need and maybe in order to proceed. Maybe it's a piece of information you need or something like that. That can certainly happen around that time too. But I'm talking about shadow periods. So shadow periods are basically this buffer of time before and after the actual Mercury retrograde phase. And I'll show this on the upcoming slides here, where you can start to notice a pattern. And as I say here, it's a noticeable pattern that exists. It's like the preview of what's to come. So if you're aware of it, even if you're not, you kind of get a little preview, and it's going to show up typically over about 2.5 weeks leading up to the actual Mercury retrograde phase. Then it strikes, then you're in it. Mercury goes retrograde, traffic jam happens, computer breaks, the copy machine breaks, your flight gets delayed, whatever. And it's like, okay, now what do I do? So then you're in the situation or the challenge, it shows up, or the game, as we might say. And so you're in it, 3 weeks of reviewing, looking to choosing different pathways, directions because of the traffic jam. And then you get to the resolution at the end. So finally, you can breathe. Here we are at the end. Mercury goes direct. And sometimes overnight, it seems like everything gets resolved. All the pieces fall into place, roads get fixed. The copy machine repairman comes out and fixes the copy machine. Your travel arrangements that maybe got mixed up for whatever reason get rescheduled. You're able to get to your destination. You probably had to put things off for a while, but like now everything's back in basically in flow where you were trying to get to about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? So that can also be something that happens. So yeah, just notice that this is just something that this is the typical flow. So again, the information kind of grinds to a halt, everything grinds to a halt, and it moves forward. So here's an example now. So if you take a look at this, so we're right here as of the time of this video. It's the 10th going into 11th, which is Tuesday, Veterans Day here in the United States. But this darker green period is basically Mercury retrograde. So again, it began on Sunday, 2:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And basically, we'll span here about 3 weeks. So we've got 3 weeks of this heavy energy here. I mean, I guess if you want to call it heavy, I don't think it's really heavy, but if you're frustrated, it can definitely feel heavy. So I'm definitely sympathetic to that. If we go back to October, though, this is the shadow period that we're talking about here. So this started around the 21st, and so this was when it passed the 20 degrees of Scorpio mark when Mercury was right at that point. So shadow is basically the period of which Mercury is going to travel back through. So it's going down the road and then it stops and it turns around when it goes retrograde on the 9th. And so it stops at 6 degrees of Sagittarius and then it's going to go all the way back over these degrees. So in a sense, it's almost like it's going back in time as it travels back over these degrees. Now, of course, on Earth, I mean, you can look up in the heaven, you can literally see Mercury going backwards. Like if you watch the patterns of the planets and the stars and everything in the heavens. So this is relatively speaking, it appears that way. Is Mercury actually going backwards in the solar system? No. Its path is and probably what will more or less be for the next several billion years, as long as before the sun becomes a red giant and totally upends everything as we know it. But pri- but for this, our purposes here on Earth, it's like what we see in the heavens does have an influence on our life down here. I can't fully explain it. I don't know why that is, but nevertheless, when we see Mercury appearing to go retrograde, our communications and everything start to change. Things start to go backwards, things start to go in reverse or get stopped or whatever. And so this is where we are in this period. So again, shadow period, kind of the presentation of the issue at hand or what will be the issue. Then the Mercury retrograde period happens, full stop. We have the issue, whatever it is, with travel arrangements, publishing, communications, the phone breaks, your phone payment gets mixed up or whatever, and so your service for Verizon or whatever gets canceled, and so you can't move forward with all your phone calls. Can be really maddening at sometimes. Some other times it's just, whatever. I'm gonna deal with it. But regardless, 3 weeks goes on. Then we get to the 29th, right after Thanksgiving, again here in the United States on the 29th. And so this is when we should really see things starting to resolve themselves, whatever the issue is that you might be faced with. Maybe you're already knee deep in it, or maybe neck deep in it. And then we get to December here, and we can see about 3 weeks after, then it all, ultimately pans out. So, again, the chart, November 9th, this is when it began. Let's see, at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, we're going to go forward again. And when we get to November 29th, we're going to see Mercury go direct. So that's the astro weather. So just some quick reminders. Again, I know it's a frustrating period. Like, I know it is a very, very, very frustrating period. It can be really, really annoying when you have plans all laid out and they just don't pan out. Like, I mean, one thing I'll share here, like from a personal experience. So, my fiance and I, Susie, we were engaged to be married, woohoo, which is awesome, right? However, we just so happened to choose our resort in Jamaica. And guess what happened? Everybody knows Hurricane Melissa hit. So this resort is absolutely destroyed. And so we're going to have to delay everything. Well, Susie's a Scorpio sun. I mean, this just so happens to affect her directly on a personal level. Her sun's at like 23 degrees of Scorpio. So on a personal level, she's really feeling this because her plans, our plans for a wedding, everything all went kablooey around this time because of the hurricane. And the hurricane struck actually right around the time Mercury was entering the shadow period. So there's the issue. Here we are in the situation. We find out that, hey, the resort is going to be closed during the time of our marriage when we would get married. So we have to figure out something. Well, what are we going to do? So we're in the process of looking around to find another venue. And it'll probably take about 3 weeks for this to all play out. And as frustrating as it is, we'll find a solution at some point or another. And, like I said, I'm betting right around the time of Mercury going direct on November 29th, we'll see it all kind of fall into place and we'll be able to move forward. So, real life example, personal, more for her than me, but I mean, but like it is personal for me. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying I don't have any direct planets in that area, so I don't. I'm very, very sympathetic. Of course, this is my marriage too, but also I'm saying that I see it happening for her, and so like it's a case and literally a case study in this and how Mercury retrograde works. Good thing I'm an astrologer, right? So I can kind of fill in the gaps. So yeah, frustrating. Be sympathetic, be kind, be compassionate for your family members, friends, anybody who may be going through it, if not yourself, and know that it is something that's going to pass. Reassure them that it's going to pass. They probably need to hear that a lot. It is going to pass. It is going to get better. You'll figure it out. The wedding will still be on. You'll get your flight arrangements. You'll fix the copy machine or send it out to pasture, whatever. But it'll all be good in the end. Another thing to think about. I just want to throw this out here just for fun, but think of Mercury as the trickster. I mean, because actually Mercury is associated with the trickster and, all the mythological lore and everything that, Mercury was, because there's a theme of the mind, and the mind likes games and wit and just challenging, testing things, though. Mine doesn't like to stay. I mean, if you know any Geminis in your life, if you yourself are a Gemini, then you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Geminis love to play games. Every single Gemini. If you're a Gemini and you're listening to this, you probably know what I'm talking about. You're like, hey, well, my twin said that, but I don't know if I don't know how true it is. I mean, yeah, actually, it is a thing, and we see that frequently. And so Mercury is associated with the trickster, the jester, the joker, the comedian, kind of this archetype of, the character that likes to play tricks on you or games. And it's usually just for fun for the most part. I mean, we see in pop culture, obviously there's a Joker, like Batman's Joker, and he's Joker is like Batman's arch nemesis, and he's very violent and murderous and all that stuff. But the Joker has like there's a point to it. Even for all this bad stuff that he does, there's a point to it. And that's actually what we think of with the trickster, that he might be playing a joke on you or a trick on you or something like that, but it's like to get you to see and learn something about yourself. We can so get locked in sort of this like, okay, I'm doing this thing, this is who I am, and you get kind of bogged down in that. And then the Joker or the trickster shows up like, okay, boom, throws like a whoop, makes you sit on a whoopee cushion. You sit down and you feel embarrassed about it, and he laughs like, ah, ha, ha. And then you stop and think about, well, why am I, like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? And you might be frustrated, you might be embarrassed. But again, the point is to get you to think about things, no right or wrong answer necessarily, but just like to step outside of your comfort zone and maybe step back and look at yourself and hopefully maybe even laugh. I mean, hopefully it's not for anything negative or bad or whatever, but just like stopping and taking a look at your life and just how you go about things and maybe not take yourself so serious. I like this example. So I'm a big Star Trek fan, in case you don't know, but I always think of John Delancey's character Q in Star Trek The Next Generation. And here he is with Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation, the captain of the Enterprise D. And Q was this being, omniscient being that just popped in from the first episode, and he showed up, all throughout the series basically. And literally the first episode was, he encounters the crew of the Enterprise, and they're on one of their early missions, and like he basically says, "Hey, I'm the judge and you're all on trial. Like literally humanity's on trial." And they can't believe it. It's like, well, what are we doing? Like, I mean, we've come so far, right? Like here we are, it's the 24th century. We have warp drive and, we can travel across the universe faster than the speed of light. And Q's like, you think you've come so far, you really haven't. Like, I'm going to show you. And then, takes them through challenges and then, periodically pops in throughout the series and all. But he's this trickster. Q is the perfect example of the trickster. And he likes Picard because Picard shows up often as a serious, very accomplished individual. Very like, he takes his role seriously. He's both, captain of the flagship of the Starship Enterprise, which is the flagship of the the Federation. He's, basically an ambassador of the Federation, and Starfleet goes all these different worlds, can negotiate all these things. Like I said, really, really accomplished guy. And Q will just show up out of the blue throughout the series and just test him and just say, whether just, by his superpowers that he has or just, just get him to really think about things differently. So I say all that to say that I kind of think of Mercury retrograde as sort of like Q showing up. I kind of wish it would be Q because that it would be cool to kind of have like this super powerful being show up that just wants to play games. And, for the most part, he's mostly harmless. He does cause some harm, unfortunately, but his heart seems to be more or less in the right place. But again, my point of this is that maybe just look at Mercury retrograde as a test by the trickster in our own lives, whatever that is. If, you have some mysterious being that hangs around you, maybe he's an alien or whatever, you could think of that as the trickster. Or maybe it's just, weird metaphysical stuff going on, whatever. But as just my suggestion for you is another way to maybe think about this period. And if it helps you to think about, okay, well, I'm stuck in this traffic jam again. That must be Q playing games with me. Okay, what does he want me to see here? Why is he showing up again? Dang it, Q. All right, so that's my talk on Mercury retrograde. So please, if you enjoyed it, subscribe, click subscribe below. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. We'll have more episodes coming your way, all about astrology as we move forward into 2026. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon on this channel.